My stepfather canceled my 12th birthday party without telling me, then told my friends I didn't want them there. When I asked if we could reschedule, he sighed and said, "Let's not drag this out." I just stared at my plate. Fast forward to now. He's crying in the driveway while the police are taking a statement from my mother. When I was 12, I had a great life back in my hometown. Close friends, teachers I liked. After school activities, everything felt comfortable and easy. But then my mom met Rick, and everything changed overnight. Rick was nothing like my dad, who passed away a few years earlier. Rick was loud and bossy and liked things exactly his way. He'd moved us across the state to live in his big, cold house far away from anyone I knew. Suddenly, I felt completely alone. At school, I ate lunch by myself, and at home, my mom barely talked to me anymore. Rick always seemed annoyed by something I did or didn't do. He'd raise his voice over the littlest things, screaming profanities and ordering me around like he owned me. Things stayed that way for months until finally, after weeks of begging, my mom said I could have a small birthday party. My heart raced. I couldn't stop smiling. I stayed up late every night planning the whole thing, imagining how awesome it would be to see my best friends again. I wrote each invitation by hand, carefully putting stickers and drawings all over them, letting my friends know how much I missed them. The week before my party, I cleaned like my life depended on it. I scrubbed every corner of that house. I cleaned the kitchen, the bathrooms, even Rick's dusty old den. Outside, I weeded and raked the yard until my back hurt, but I didn't mind. It was worth it to see my friends again and to feel normal, even for one day. 2 days before the party, Mom called me into the garage. She looked nervous, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. She barely looked me in the eyes when she whispered that the party was canceled because Rick's friend was coming over. My stomach dropped, and I couldn't breathe. Rick already called my friend's parents without even telling me first. He told them I canceled it myself because I didn't want to see them. I couldn't even argue. I just stood there feeling numb and stupid. At dinner that night, I tried one last time. I asked if we could move the party to next weekend instead. Rick just groaned and sighed. "Let's not drag this out," before going right back to his steak. Mom immediately changed the subject, talking about sales at the store. On my birthday morning, Mom said a quick, "Happy birthday," while rushing past me in the hallway. The rest of the day felt like any other day. I spent hours helping Mom cook and clean for Rick's friend, the one who ruined everything. When the guy showed up with a bottle of wine, he didn't even know it was my birthday. Mom mentioned it quietly, and he looked shocked. He even gave Rick a look of disgust after finding out my party was canceled because Rick wanted him to come over. He was so appalled he actually left, telling Rick to get his priorities straight. I remember a sly smile came across my face, but that quickly faded when Rick turned to me and yelled to go to my room. I know I should have given up, but I still held out hope. I heard Mom and Rick talking about going out to this new coffee shop. I gathered all the courage I had left and asked them if maybe I could tag along. I told them I wouldn't even say a word, just get a birthday donut or something. But Mom just gave me this sad, uncomfortable look and asked softly, "You're happy to stay here, right?" She said it like she wanted me to say yes, like she wanted to keep pretending she wasn't neglecting me. I felt my last hope crumble again. So, I nodded slowly. And it's while they were leaving the house that I decided something. I was done being their pushover. Rick couldn't treat me this way. I was going to get back at him and show him just how much of a nuisance a rebellious teen could be. I started small. Rick had this massive vinyl record collection that he organized by genre and then by release date. He was super obsessive about it. When they were out, I carefully reorganized everything alphabetically. When they got home, Rick went to put on some music and immediately noticed. His face turned this weird shade of red. I put on my most innocent face and said I was just trying to help organize. Mom jumped in, saying how thoughtful I was, so Rick had to swallow whatever he was going to say. He just kept giving me these suspicious looks for the rest of the night. That night, I started a journal. I wrote down the date, time, and details of every time Rick yelled or said something mean. I documented everything. How he spoke to me, how he spoke to Mom when he thought I couldn't hear, all of it. I kept the journal hidden under my mattress. I felt like a spy gathering intelligence. The next week, I left the journal on my desk by accident. I was writing in it before school and forgot to hide it. When I got home, Rick was in my room, standing over my desk. My heart nearly stopped. He held the journal and asked what it was. I blurted out the first thing I could think of, that it was a creative writing project about a fictional stepfather character for English class. He looked skeptical, but handed it back. I could tell he hadn't read much of it. I decided I needed allies. The next day at school, I made an appointment with the counselor, Miss Ree. She seemed nice, and I thought maybe she could help. I started telling her about Rick, but she quickly explained that if she heard anything that suggested I was in danger, she'd have to report it. I backtracked fast. I didn't want to make things worse at home. Instead, I edited my story to make it sound less serious while still getting some advice about dealing with difficult family changes. After that close call, I realized I needed actual evidence. I started using my phone to record Rick's outbursts. The first time I tried, the battery died right in the middle of him screaming about how I'd used too much laundry detergent. After that, I started hiding charging cables around the house, one under the living room couch, one behind the bookshelf in the hallway. I also got really good at predicting when Rick was about to blow up. His neck would get all red first, then his eyes would narrow. After Rick installed parental controls on all our devices, claiming it was for safety, I started using the school computers during lunch. I researched family law and children's rights, printing out important pages and hiding them under my mattress with my journal. I learned a lot about emotional abuse and started seeing patterns in Rick's behavior that matched the descriptions. One night when Rick was out, I tried talking to Mom. I showed her some of the articles I printed about emotional abuse. She got all defensive, saying, "Rick provides for us, and you just need to try harder to get along with him." She wouldn't even look at the papers. I realized I needed something stronger to make her understand. The next day at lunch, I borrowed Jamie's phone and texted my old best friend, Casey. Casey was cold at first, saying everyone thought I ditched them for my better life in the new town. I spent the whole lunch period explaining what was really happening. By the end, Casey believed me and promised to help however they could. Just having that one connection to my old life made me feel less alone. With Casey back on my side, I got brave enough to ask Mom if we could visit our old town sometime. Rick overheard and completely lost it. He called me ungrateful and said I was trying to manipulate Mom. She just stood there, saying nothing. I realized direct confrontation wasn't going to work with Rick. I needed to be smarter about it. I started looking for allies closer to home. Our neighbor, Mrs. Elizabeth, has this amazing garden, and I offered to help her pull weeds one Saturday. Rick saw me talking to her and later told me I wasn't allowed to speak to neighbors without permission first. So I got creative. I'd accidentally run into neighbors while taking out the trash or checking the mail. Quick conversations they wouldn't notice, but enough to establish that I existed and seemed normal. After about a month of planning, I set up a private email account on the school computers. I used it to stay in touch with Casey and some other friends from my old town. The day after I set it up, Rick announced at dinner that he was monitoring all online activity through the home network. He couldn't track what I did at school, though. My secret support network was the one thing he couldn't control. Now I'm working on phase 2 of my plan. Casey's going to mail me a prepaid phone hidden in a birthday card. Mom's starting to notice how controlling Rick is, especially after he forbade me from calling my grandmother, my dad's mom. I think if I can just get enough evidence and support, we might be able to leave or at least make Rick back off. I don't know if this will work. Rick's smart and always watching, but for the first time since we moved here, I don't feel completely powerless. I have my journal, my recordings, and friends who know the truth. Most importantly, I have a plan. Rick might have canceled my birthday party, but he hasn't canceled me. Not yet. Anyway, I was getting ready for Casey's package to arrive any day. Every morning, I'd make sure to grab the mail before Rick could. After about a week of watching, I figured out the mail usually came around 10:30 a.m. Rick worked from home most days, but always had a video call with his team at 10 o'clock. Perfect timing for me to casually check the mailbox without raising suspicion. Then, on Tuesday, my plan fell apart. Rick's meeting got canceled, and he decided to get some fresh air right when the mail truck pulled up. I watched from the kitchen window as he collected everything. My heart dropped when I saw him flipping through the stack, pausing at what looked like a colorful envelope. "What's this?" he asked when he came back inside, holding up Casey's card. The return address said, Aunt Karen, which was our code name. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe a late birthday card." Rick narrowed his eyes and started opening it. I wanted to scream that it was my mail and he had no right, but I knew that would just make things worse. "Who's Aunt Karen?" he asked, pulling out the card with a phone taped inside. "I don't remember your mom mentioning any Karen." My mind raced. Mom has a cousin Karen. Maybe that's her. I don't really know all the family. Rick didn't buy it. Well, I'm going to hold on to this until we figure out who sent it, he said, pocketing the phone. Seems strange to send a kid a phone without talking to the parents first. That night, I heard Rick and Mom arguing about the phone. She actually stood up for me, saying he had no right to open my mail. He shouted something about his house, his rules, and Mom got quiet after that. The phone was gone, and so was my direct line to Casey. Time for Plan B. The next day at lunch, I borrowed Jamie's phone again and called my grandmother. I hadn't spoken to her since we moved. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. Hello. Her voice made my throat tight. Grandma, it's me. Oh my goodness. She sounded like she might cry. I've been trying to reach you for months. I've left so many messages with Rick. That hit me like a truck. Rick never told me she called. Not once. I had to find a quiet corner of the cafeteria so no one would see me fighting back tears. He never gave me any messages. I whispered. I didn't know you were trying to call. Grandma was quiet for a moment. That man, she finally said, her voice hard. I knew something wasn't right. Your mother barely calls anymore. And when she does, he's always hovering in the background. We talked until the lunch bell rang. I promised to find a way to call again and hung up, feeling both better and worse. Better because I knew Grandma was still there for us. Worse because I realized Rick had been cutting us off from everyone who cared about us. That evening, I decided to confront Mom about Grandma's calls. I waited until Rick was in the garage working on his car. Mom, I said, finding her folding laundry in her bedroom. I talked to Grandma today. She froze, a t-shirt half folded in her hands. How did you do that? At school, Mom. She said she's been trying to reach us for months. Rick never told me. Mom sat heavily on the bed. He said it was better if we had a clean break. He told me your grandmother blamed me for your father's death. What? Grandma would never say that. She loves you. Before Mom could respond, I heard the door to the garage slam. Rick had come back inside. Mom quickly put a finger to her lips, and we went back to folding clothes like nothing had happened. Later that night, I casually suggested to Mom that maybe we could invite Grandma for a visit, just for a day to catch up. I didn't realize Rick was in the hallway. He stormed into the kitchen, face already turning that warning shade of red. Absolutely not, he snapped. I'm not having that woman in my house criticizing everything. This ends now. I'm putting an end to all this nonsense once and for all. I hadn't brought my school recorder home that day, but my phone was in my pocket. I quietly pressed the record button, hoping to capture his tirade. Rick ranted for nearly 10 minutes about how ungrateful we both were, how he'd given us this amazing life, and all we did was complain and go behind his back. Mom just stood there, shoulders hunched, occasionally murmuring, "Yes, Rick," or "I understand." The next day, I used the school computer to email the recording to Grandma and Casey. I figured having multiple copies was safer than just keeping it on my phone. What I didn't count on was the school IT guy, Mr. Thompson, monitoring unusual activity on student accounts. He called Mom that afternoon. "Mrs. Marshall, this is Dave Thompson from Westlake Middle School. I'm calling because we noticed your son sending some unusual emails today with audio attachments. It's against school policy to use the computers for personal communication." Mom apologized and promised to talk to me. When I got home, she didn't seem angry, just worried. "What were you sending, honey?" I was about to tell her everything when Rick walked in. "What's this about emails?" he demanded. I shrugged. "Just a project for audio editing class. I was sending myself some test files." Rick didn't believe me. That night, he announced new rules. No computer use at school except for supervised classwork, daily phone checks, and a 7 p.m. curfew for being in my room. Mom looked uncomfortable with these restrictions. I decided to try a new tactic, making the controls so obvious that even Mom couldn't ignore it. Next morning at breakfast, I asked in my most polite voice, "Rick, may I please have some water?" He looked confused but nodded. A few minutes later, "Rick, may I please use the bathroom?" By dinner, I was asking permission for everything. "Rick, may I please sit down?" "Rick, may I please use a napkin?" Mom noticed. I could see her watching, frowning slightly. Rick got more and more irritated. "Stop with the attitude." He finally snapped when I asked if I could please pass the salt. "I'm not giving attitude, sir," I replied, laying it on thick. "I'm following the rules and asking permission." The sir was too much. Rick slammed his hand on the table, making the plates jump. "Go to your room. No dinner tonight." I went without arguing, my stomach growling. Through the floor, I could hear Mom and Rick arguing. It was the first time I'd heard her raise her voice to him. I pressed my ear to the floor, trying to make out the words, but they were too muffled. The next morning, Mom had a bruise on her wrist. It was small, just a faint purple mark, but I noticed it immediately when she reached for the cereal box. "What happened to your arm?" I asked quietly. She quickly pulled her sleeve down. "Oh, I bumped into the counter last night. It's nothing." But her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about me anymore. Rick was hurting Mom, too. I needed to accelerate my plans. That day at school, I found out about a science fair happening in 2 weeks. Parents were invited. I immediately thought of Grandma. This could be our chance to see her without Rick knowing in advance. I called her from Jamie's phone at lunch and explained my plan. She'd show up as a surprise to see my project. Rick wouldn't be able to make a scene in public with all the teachers around. Everything was set. Grandma even booked a hotel room nearby, thinking maybe Mom and I could sneak out to see her there, too. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Then, the night before the science fair, Rick announced we wouldn't be going. "Family emergency," he said vaguely. "We need to drive to my brother's place tomorrow." "My project is at the science fair," I protested. "It's not as important as family," Rick cut me off. End of discussion. Mom wouldn't look at me. I realized she knew this was a lie, but wouldn't stand up to him. I was desperate. During lunch the next day, I wrote a note to my science teacher, Ms. Morgan. "Ms. Morgan, my grandmother was coming to the science fair to surprise me because Rick, Mom's boyfriend, doesn't let me see her. Please tell her I'm sorry I missed her and that he wouldn't let us come. I really want to see her." I slipped the note under her door and prayed she'd understand. That evening, the phone rang during dinner. Rick answered it, his expression darkening as he listened. "Yes, this is Rick Marshall," he said. I noticed he used Mom's last name like they were married. "What's this about?" From his reactions, I could tell it was Ms. Morgan calling about my note. His knuckles turned white around the phone. "He has a very active imagination," Rick said with a fake laugh. "Kids, right? Thank you for your concern. Everything is fine here." He hung up and glared at me. "Pack up your science project. You're transferring to Oak Ridge starting Monday." Mom finally spoke up. "What? Rick, you can't just change his school without discussing it with me." "Watch me," he snapped. "Your kid, your precious little angel, just told his teacher I'm abusing him. Do you understand what could happen? CPS could show up here." "What exactly did his teacher say?" Mom pressed, ignoring his anger. This was new. She usually backed down immediately. "That doesn't matter. What matters is he's causing problems, and I'm putting a stop to it. He's going to a new school where no one knows us." "I'm going to that parent-teacher conference," Mom said firmly. "Alone. I want to hear exactly what the teacher has to say." Rick started to argue, but Mom stood her ground. "No, Rick. This is my child. I'm going." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom was actually standing up to him. Rick eventually stormed off to the garage, slamming the door behind him. The next day, Mom went to meet with Ms. Morgan while Rick stayed home, supposedly to keep an eye on me. Really, he spent the time going through my room. I watched from the hallway as he pulled out my mattress, checked under my dresser, and rummaged through my closet. He found my journal. I held my breath as he flipped it open, his face getting darker with each page he read. I backed away silently and went to the backyard to wait for Mom. When she got home, her face was set in a way I hadn't seen since before we met Rick. She found me on the back steps and sat beside me. "Ms. Morgan showed me your note," she said quietly. "She also said you seemed withdrawn at school, that you eat lunch alone. Why didn't you tell me things were so bad?" I shrugged. "You never listened before." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I'm listening now, and I've been thinking about your grandmother. Rick had no right to keep her calls from us." Just then, the back door opened. Rick stood there, my journal in his hand. "Care to explain this?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Mom stood up. "Were you in his room going through his things?" "Don't change the subject. Your son has been keeping a record of evidence against me. He's planning to use it against us." "Against you," I corrected. "Not us, just you. Go to your room," Mom said, not taking her eyes off Rick. "Now." I went inside, but stayed in the hallway where I could hear them on the patio. Their voices rose and fell. I heard Mom mention Grandma, and Rick's voice got louder. "I've about had it with both of you," he shouted. "Maybe I need to reconsider this whole arrangement. You think you can do better than this house, this life I've given you. Are you threatening to kick us out?" Mom asked, her voice steady. I'm saying I deserve some goddamn appreciation and respect in my own home. Their argument continued, but they moved inside and lowered their voices. I crept back to my room, heart pounding. Was Rick really threatening to throw us out? Where would we go? Back to Grandma's, maybe. Later that night, Mom came to my room. Rick had gone to the garage again, probably to cool off. Show me, she said simply. Everything you've been collecting. I pulled out the printouts from under my mattress, the recordings on my phone. The journal Rick had returned to my room, throwing it on my bed with a disgusted look. Mom read through everything slowly, listening to the recordings with a hand over her mouth. I was trying to protect you, she finally said. I thought having a stable home, financial security, I thought that was the most important thing after your father died. I was so wrong. For the first time, we started talking about leaving. Mom admitted she was scared. Rick controlled all their money. Her paychecks went into a joint account, and she had to ask for spending money. The house was in his name. The car, too. But we can figure it out, she said, determination in her voice. First, we need to gather important documents. Birth certificates, social security cards, your dad's life insurance policy information. I think most of that is in the filing cabinet in Rick's office. We began making plans in secret. Mom would take a little cash from the grocery money each week and hide it. I kept watching Rick's patterns, noting when he went to play golf or meet friends. Then, Grandma called the house. It was pure luck that I answered. Rick was in the shower, and Mom was doing laundry in the basement. Just hearing her voice made me feel braver. We're figuring out how to leave, I whispered into the phone. But it might take some time. I can help, Grandma said. I've been talking to a family lawyer friend of mine. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. I have to go, I said quickly. Love you. I had barely hung up when Rick came down the stairs, hair still wet. Who was that? He demanded. Just someone from school about homework, I lied. He looked suspicious but didn't press it. The next morning, I woke up to shouting downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. You don't get to decide who visits my house, Rick was yelling. I peeked around the corner and saw Grandma standing in our living room, Rick blocking her way further into the house. Mom was behind him, looking both terrified and relieved. I drove 5 hours to see my grandson and daughter-in-law, Grandma said calmly. I'm not leaving until I do. Rick's face was bright red. You weren't invited. You can't just show up like this. A car door slammed outside, and our neighbor, Mr. David, appeared in the doorway, which was still open from Grandma's arrival. Everything okay over here? He asked, looking between Rick and Grandma. Heard some shouting from across the street. Rick's demeanor changed instantly. Just a misunderstanding, he said with a tight smile. Family stuff? You know how it is. With the neighbor watching, Rick had no choice but to let Grandma in. He plastered on a fake smile and played the gracious host, but I could see the rage simmering beneath the surface. He kept giving Mom and me warning looks when Grandma wasn't watching. During lunch, Grandma casually mentioned she was considering moving closer to us. I'm looking at a place just about 20 minutes from here, she said. It would be so nice to see you both more often. Rick's knuckles turned white around his fork. How nice, he managed to say. After a tense afternoon, Grandma finally left with a promise to visit again soon. The moment her car pulled away, Rick exploded. He grabbed a framed photo of Mom, Dad, and me from the mantel and threw it against the wall. The glass shattered across the hardwood floor. Don't you ever ambush me like that again, he screamed at Mom. This is my house. You want to see your precious mother-in-law? You do it somewhere else. And you, he turned to me. I know you're behind this. You're grounded for a month. No friends, no activities, nothing. What Rick didn't know was that I'd set up my school voice recorder in the living room before Grandma arrived, hiding it behind some books on the shelf. It captured his entire meltdown, including threats to throw all your crap on the lawn if you ever try something like this again, and make you both regret the day you moved in here. That night, when Rick went to the garage to work on his car, I snuck the recorder to Mom. She listened with her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. I had no idea it was this bad, she whispered. I mean, I knew he had a temper, but hearing it like this, we didn't have much time before Rick would come back in. Mom quickly handed the recorder back to me. Hide this somewhere safe. We're leaving soon. How soon? I asked. I need to figure some things out first. Financial stuff. But we're going to Grandma's. I promise. If you ever feel unsafe, we have a code word, okay? Say blue chess piece, and I'll know we need to leave immediately. No questions asked. The sound of the garage door made us jump. Mom quickly wiped her eyes as Rick walked in. For the next week, we walked on eggshells. Rick was still angry about Grandma's visit, but it settled into cold silence rather than shouting. Mom started secretly packing a bag with essentials, some clothes, toiletries, medications. She hid it in the back of her closet under some old winter sweaters. I packed a backpack, too, just the important stuff like my journal, the recordings, and a photo of Dad. Every day, we added a little more to our hidden bags. Every night, I went to bed wondering if tomorrow would be the day we finally left. Then, I came home from school one day and found Rick going through Mom's closet. My blood ran cold when I saw our emergency bags on the bed. "What's this?" he asked when he saw me in the doorway. His voice was eerily calm. "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom's stuff, I guess." Rick nodded slowly. "Interesting that she has a packed bag hidden in the back of her closet, almost like she's planning to go somewhere." I said nothing, my heart hammering against my ribs. Rick stepped closer to me. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I shook my head. Rick studied my face for a long moment, then brushed past me out of the room. I immediately texted Mom from my school tablet. He found the bags. When Mom got home, Rick was waiting. He didn't yell this time, which was somehow worse. He spoke in a controlled, quiet voice about trust and family loyalty. He talked about all he'd done for us, how ungrateful we were. "If you want to leave, Elizabeth," he said to Mom, using her full name, "just say so, but understand what you're giving up. The house, the car, the financial security. You really want to drag your son back to poverty." Mom looked at me, then back at Rick. "We need to talk about this, but not now. Not like this." Rick nodded like he'd won. "Take some time to think about it. Make the smart choice." That night, Mom came to my room after Rick went to bed. "We're still leaving," she whispered. "But we need to be smarter. I'm going to convince him I've changed my mind. Make him think he's won. Then, when he's not expecting it, we'll go." For the next couple of weeks, Mom played her part perfectly. She was agreeable, even affectionate with Rick. She, accidentally, left her phone where he could check it. She talked about future plans for the house, making Rick think she was committed to staying. I played along, too, acting less hostile toward Rick. It made my skin crawl to pretend everything was fine, but I knew it was our only chance. We needed him to lower his guard. Meanwhile, Mom was secretly preparing. She took half her lunch break each day to open a new bank account at a different bank. She had her next paycheck directed there instead of the joint account. She made copies of important documents when Rick was out playing golf. She stayed in touch with Grandma, coordinating our escape. The plan was to leave while Rick was at his monthly golf game with friends. It was the one time we could count on him being gone for at least 4 hours. Grandma would drive up that morning and meet us 2 blocks away. We'd take only what we could carry and leave everything else behind. But 3 days before our planned escape, Rick announced he was taking time off work that week. "I thought we could do some family activities," he said at dinner. "Maybe drive up to the lake house." Mom and I exchanged glances. This ruined everything. He wouldn't be going to golf. We wouldn't have our window of opportunity. "That sounds wonderful," Mom said with a forced smile. "When were you thinking?" "I'm off starting Thursday. We could leave first thing in the morning." Thursday was when we'd planned to leave. Now we needed a new plan fast. That night, Mom whispered our revised plan. We'd have to create a diversion, something that would get Rick out of the house long enough for us to grab our bags and go. Grandma would still come, but instead of meeting her down the street, she'd need to pick us up directly from the house the moment Rick was distracted. Thursday morning arrived with a knot of tension. Rick was cheerful, talking about the lake house and all the activities he had planned. Mom kept up the pretense of excitement while I tried not to look as nervous as I felt. After breakfast, Mom accidentally knocked over a glass of water onto the basement door. "Oh no," she exclaimed. "It's leaking through to the basement." Rick went to check, and sure enough, water was seeping under the door. When he opened it, Mom tripped and bumped into him, spilling her entire coffee mug down the stairs. "What the hell, Elizabeth?" Rick snapped. "I'm so sorry. Let me get some towels." Mom hurried to the kitchen, sending me a meaningful look. This was it. Rick trudged down to the basement to assess the damage. The moment he was out of sight, Mom and I grabbed our hidden bags from behind the couch, where we'd stashed them that morning. We headed straight for the door. We made it to the car, and Mom fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking. Just as she started the engine, the front door burst open. Rick ran out, his face contorted with rage when he saw us in the car. "What do you think you're doing?" he shouted, running toward us. Mom threw the car in reverse just as Rick reached us. He slammed his hands on the hood. "Stop the car right now." Mom carefully maneuvered around him, but he kept moving to block our path. I quickly pulled out my phone and called Grandma, who answered immediately. "We need help," I said. "Rick's blocking the car." "I'm 2 minutes away," Grandma replied. "Hold tight." Rick was now standing in the driveway, blocking our exit completely. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police," he threatened. "You can't take my car." "It's not your car," Mom replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "It's in my name. Check the registration." Rick faltered, and in that moment of confusion, Grandma's car pulled up with a screech. Right behind her was another car. The family lawyer Mom had mentioned, Mr. Anson, was driving with a serious expression on his face. Rick's eyes widened as they both got out. He started backing up toward the house. "You can't do this," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "Elizabeth, think about what you're doing." The lawyer approached Rick with a document in hand. "Mr. Marshall, this is a restraining order based on documented evidence of emotional abuse and threats. You need to maintain a distance of at least 100 feet from Elizabeth and her son." Effective immediately, Rick's face went from red to white. He looked at Mom, then at me, and at the neighbors who were starting to peek out their windows at the commotion. "This isn't over," he said quietly before turning and walking back into the house. Mom let out a shaky breath and put the car in drive. We followed Grandma's car to a restaurant about 20 minutes away where we could regroup and figure out our next steps. As we drove, I watched Rick's housino, not our house anymore, grow smaller in the side mirror until it disappeared completely. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. We weren't safe yet, but for the first time since meeting Rick, we were free. I looked over at Mom, who was gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white, but she was smiling through her tears. "We did it," she whispered. "We're going home." We pulled into the restaurant parking lot, and I just sat there for a minute, trying to process everything that had happened. The adrenaline was still pumping through me. My hands were shaking, and I realized I'd been clutching my backpack so tight my fingers hurt when I finally let go. Grandma parked next to us and practically ran to Mom's side of the car. They hugged for a long time, with Mom sobbing into Grandma's shoulder. The lawyer guy, Mr. Anson, stood awkwardly by his car until they finished. "We should go inside," he said, checking his watch. "It's better to discuss next steps somewhere public." The restaurant was one of those family-style places with tacky decorations on the walls. We got a booth in the back corner where we could talk privately. I wasn't hungry at all, but Grandma insisted I at least get some fries. Mom just ordered coffee. Her hands were still shaking so badly she could barely hold the cup. Mr. Anson put a leather folder on the table. "The temporary restraining order will last for 2 weeks," he explained. "During that time, we'll prepare for a hearing for a permanent order. The recordings and journal entries you provided give us a strong case." "What if he comes after us?" I asked. The question had been burning in my mind since we drove away. "That would violate the order," Mr. Anson said. "He'd face serious legal consequences. Most people in Rick's position are smart enough not to risk it." Mom was staring into her coffee. "Where will we go?" "All our things are still at the house." "You'll stay with me," Grandma said immediately. "Both of you." "I've already set up the guest room." "But your house is only 2 bedrooms," Mom protested. "I'll sleep on the couch," I offered. Honestly, I would have slept in a closet if it meant getting away from Rick. "We can figure out the sleeping arrangements later," Grandma said. "What matters is you're both safe." Mr. Anson explained that we'd need to go back to Rick's house to get our essential belongings, but not alone. "I can arrange for a police escort tomorrow," he said. "Rick won't be allowed on the premises while you're there." The thought of going back made my stomach turn, but there was stuff I needed. More clothes, my school things, and the wooden chess set Dad gave me before he died. I'd left it behind in our rush to escape. We stayed at the restaurant for almost 2 hours, making plans and filling out paperwork. Mr. Anson kept checking his phone. At one point, he excused himself to take a call, and when he came back, he looked serious. "Rick just called my office," he said. "He wants to talk about a property settlement." Mom looked up sharply. "Already?" "It's actually good news," Mr. Anson explained. "It means he's accepting the situation rather than fighting it. I told my assistant to schedule a meeting next week." By the time we left, It was almost dark. We followed Grandma's car to her house, our old neighborhood where we lived before Rick. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, but in a good way, cozy instead of cramped. Grandma's house smelled exactly the same, like cinnamon and old books. My throat got tight when I walked in. I hadn't realized how much I missed this place until I was standing in it again. That night, despite Grandma's protests, I slept on the pull-out couch. Mom took the guest room, and I could hear her crying through the wall. I wanted to go comfort her, but something told me she needed to let it all out on her own. I barely slept. Every car that drove by made me tense up, thinking it might be Rick. Around 3 a.m., I got up and checked all the doors and windows to make sure they were locked. Grandma found me sitting by the front window, keeping watch. "He won't come here," she said gently, sitting beside me. "But if it makes you feel better, I had new locks installed last week." "You knew we were coming?" "I hoped," she said. "Ever since you called me from school that day, I've been preparing just in case." The next morning, Mr. Anson arrived with a police officer, Officer Taylor, a woman with short brown hair and a kind face. We drove back to Rick's house in a small convoy. Mr. Anson's car, the police cruiser, and Grandma's car with the three of us. Rick's car wasn't in the driveway, which was a huge relief. Officer Taylor went in first to make sure he wasn't there, then waved us in. We had 2 hours to get what we needed. The house felt different, colder, more sterile. I went straight to my room and started packing everything that mattered. Clothes, books, my chest set. I found my hidden phone chargers and smiled a little, thinking about how paranoid I'd become. Mom was methodical, going through the house, collecting our important documents from Rick's office. She found our birth certificates and Dad's life insurance papers in a locked drawer. Officer Taylor helped her make a list of everything we were taking so there couldn't be any disputes later. I was packing up my desk when I noticed something missing. My journal, the one Rick had found with all my documentation of his behavior. I tore apart my room looking for it, but it was gone. "He probably destroyed it," Mom said when I told her. "But it doesn't matter now. We have the recordings, and Mr. Anson has copies of everything." We were almost finished when my school tablet pinged with a new email. It was from Rick, sent to my school account. The subject line read, "I know you'll check this eventually." I hesitated, then opened it. There was just one line. "I hope you're happy with what you've done to this family." I showed it to Officer Taylor, who added it to her report as another violation. "Don't respond," she advised. "Block his email and tell your school's IT department not to accept any messages from him." We loaded everything into Grandma's car and Mr. Anson's trunk. As we were leaving, I took one last look at the house. I'd been so miserable there, but part of me still felt weird about leaving, like I was abandoning something not Rick, never him, but maybe the idea that Mom and I could have a normal life with someone who wasn't Dad. Back at Grandma's, we started settling in. Mom enrolled me in my old school, and I was surprised how easily they took me back. Miss Linda, the principal, just nodded understandingly when Mom explained the situation. "Unfortunately, we see this more often than you'd think," she said. "We'll make sure he can't pick him up or access any information." My old friends were shocked to see me back. The rumors had been wild. Some people thought we'd moved to Europe. Others heard Mom got some amazing job offer. I didn't tell them the whole truth, just that things hadn't worked out with Mom's boyfriend and we'd moved back. Casey was the only one who knew everything, and having someone to talk to who understood made a huge difference. That first week back at school was weird, but better than I expected. My old chess club welcomed me back like I'd never left. Mom started therapy right away. I overheard her first phone session from the living room. The therapist asked why she stayed with Rick so long, and Mom's answer broke my heart. "He never hit us," she said, like that made everything okay. I thought as long as there wasn't physical abuse, we were fine. After that, Grandma suggested I might benefit from talking to someone, too. I resisted at first. I wasn't the one who got fooled by Rick, after all. But eventually, I agreed to try it. My therapist, Dr. Quinn, helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for protecting Mom, even though I'd done a good job of it. About 3 weeks after we left, I was walking home from Casey's house when I spotted a familiar car parked near Grandma's. My blood went cold. It was Rick's black Audi. I remembered our safety plan. Don't approach the house. Go to Mrs. Mitchell next door, call Grandma or Mom immediately. Mrs. Mitchell was working in her garden when I ran up. "Rick's here," I blurted out. She immediately brought me inside and called both the police and Grandma. Grandma wasn't home. She was grocery shopping, but Mom was. I felt sick thinking about her alone in the house with Rick. Mrs. Mitchell kept me in her kitchen while we waited for the police, distracting me with cookies I couldn't eat. The police arrived within minutes. From Mrs. Mitchell's window, I watched two officers approach Rick's car. He was just sitting there, not even trying to hide. They talked for a while. Then one officer went to Grandma's door while the other stayed with Rick. When Grandma got home about 20 minutes later, I ran out to meet her. The police were still there, and Rick was arguing with one of the officers. I just wanted to talk to them, he was saying. I brought some of their things they left behind. The restraining order is very clear, sir, the officer replied. You can't be within 100 feet of them. You need to leave now. Rick saw me standing with Grandma, and his expression changed. For a second, I thought he might charge at us, but instead, he just got in his car and drove away. The officer came over and explained that Rick claimed he was just returning property. There's a box on the porch, he said. We've checked it, just some clothes and books. No danger, but it's still a violation of the order. Mom was shaken by the incident, but trying to act brave for me. See, the system works, she said with a forced smile. He can't hurt us anymore. But I noticed she double-checked all the locks that night, and the next day, Grandma called a security company about installing cameras. The weeks turned into months. Rick was ordered to attend anger management classes after his restraining order violation. We eventually moved into a small apartment near Grandma's house, but I still spent most weekends with her. Mom got a job at a local bookstore, and I went back to my old activities. Chess club, science club, normal kid stuff. It wasn't perfect. I still had nightmares sometimes. Mom still flinched at loud noises. But slowly, things got better. We established new routines, made new friends. Mom even started dating again, very cautiously, a nice guy named James who worked as a librarian and always asked my opinion about things. After the court made the restraining order permanent, we finally felt secure enough to have that birthday party I never got. Nothing fancy, just pizza and games at our apartment with my old friends. Mom went all out with decorations and a huge cake. While everyone was playing video games, Casey pulled me aside. You know what I just realized? You never would have had this party if you'd stayed with that Rick guy. I looked around at my friends laughing, Mom chatting with Grandma, the colorful streamers hanging from our ceiling. Yeah, I said. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Not to get all philosophical or whatever, but I think that's true. If Rick hadn't canceled my birthday party last year, I might never have started fighting back. I might still be that quiet, scared kid walking on eggshells in a cold house. Now I'm back where I belong, with people who actually care about me. Last week, I ran into Rick's friend, the one who came over on my canceled birthday and left disgusted. He recognized me at the mall and came over to say hi. He told me Rick never mentions us anymore, like we never existed. That's fine by me. In my mind, he doesn't exist either.